Guys love looking for a positive identity. We throw around the words masculinity, man, alpha, all kinds of real good feel-goods. And you know what? Nobody cares. The question you should be asking yourself is, what do I want? In this case, I want to eat, and I don't want to have to take a grocery trip to eat. You want to fuck your wife. You want to get a plate. You want to stop having anxiety attacks. You want to defeat Godzilla. You know, man goals. So red pill, for this is a toolbox, a set of techniques. Cooking is also a toolbox, or a set of techniques. In this case, I don't buy a $1,000 kitchen knife. I buy a $10 IKEA knife. Why? Because that ceramic wheel I just used to keep it sharp destroys knives, but gives me a good edge. I was going to show you a video of me hammering away at the potato, something like a metaphor, but it looks stupid. So we're going to cube a bunch of vegetables and make some leftovers. Now when cutting anything, you tuck your fingers behind the knife and let the side of the blade slide across your knuckles. This way it lets you cut everything at the same thickness, which means it all cooks at the same time. Use a flat edge to keep it steady, then start with a slice, continue with a julienne, and end off with a cube. So the same as you keep your knife sharp, you gotta keep your body sharp. The first tool. Girls are in a buyer's market right now. They get to pick and choose the top 10% of men. Tinder, Bumble, Instagram. We used to only have to compete with our small-ass town. For some women, we're in competition worldwide. So like I said, first tool, aesthetics. The best part, it's something guys already like. Training physical strength. Remember, girls love muscular men, but what they think muscular is far less than what we think. So if you want to be swole, have at her. But it does make life much easier if you're lean. Second tool is frame. Men today are raised by women. Divorce thoughts, single mom thoughts. About half the thoughts out there raised this generation of men. And I want to give them all an attaboy because they culled our competition for us. Thoughtpocalypse indeed. Now if you'll notice here, the blade has a bit of a curve to it. The tip doesn't touch the cutting board when I slide it across. This is so you can keep the vegetable or fruit attached at the stem, and you can make even cuts. You'll get used to the angle you need to hold the blade at. Also, for potatoes, they have a lot of starch in them. Give them a rinse, and it makes them that much easier to get them crisp. Also, for starches like potatoes or rice, they cook much faster in the microwave. Use that, and you're going to save yourself tons of time when you set them on the stove for a sear. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, thoughtpocalypse. So when you have a kid, taught to seek validation from the one adult in his life, it really screws up a guy's ability to grow up. Mom traded in the narcissism of her son of a bitch ex-husband, or as you know him, weekend dad. She traded it in for codependence. Meanwhile, everybody's been filling girls' heads with that void of narcissism that just got created. Boys are defective girls, girls are defective boys. In this case, when I put oil in the pan, make sure it's preheated so that it gets very hot before I add the starches. Otherwise, they start absorbing the oil instead of using it to form a sear. Use a high smoke point oil, like peanut, not olive. Back to frame. Frame is you getting back to your natural state. You learn skills like a healthy selfishness, like you hear during those airplane safety speeches. When the mask falls from the compartment, you put yours on before helping anybody else. You also learn healthy self-worth and direction. You got your mission. Anything outside that's either amusing, intriguing, or funny. For the most part though, you want to let the potatoes sit there and sear. Give them a toss every now and again until they look the way you want them. Third tool, boundaries. You're going to learn healthy boundaries. You're going to have your no-go behaviors, and you're going to establish them. Not by talking about them, but by making them ooze out of every action you take. And with this, you will learn to avoid things like the cost-sunk fallacy, or by being shamed and otherwise manipulated to do what others want you to do. You would rather nuke your life than be offered the indignity of enslavement by another person. And the best part? People only attack soft targets. So the better your boundaries are, the less they're tested. Life starts to get easy. Fourth tool, mental models. So you're reading The Rational Male, Ian Ironwood, Jack Donovan, or heaven forbid, my crappy stuff, you're going to start seeing some stories about how the world works. Doesn't matter if they're accurate, it only matters if they're useful. Remember those fancy models of the solar system you saw as a kid, where you turn a crank and all the planets spin? Well, that's called an orrery, and that's what you're essentially building here. But instead of the sun, you got your big fat head in the middle of it. Each story is a mental model, or one gear you add to the machine. Each gear makes everything move just a little bit differently. Your wife is disrespectful, you adopt Tool 5, the Captain First Officer model. You have one-itis for a girl, you adopt Tool 6. Always keep 2 in the kitty, getting more plates. One thing here you're going to practice and you're going to learn through experience, by the way, is how often certain foods take to cook. When you're looking to cook everything evenly, you want to add things in order for the length of time it takes you to cook them. Like in this case, minute 1 you add potato, minute 4 you add onion, minute 7 you add corn, then you remove from the stove on minute 8. You're just going to get a feel for it. Cooking is pretty forgiving, much less forgiving than your bitch ex-wife Susan. So back to your tools. After your divorce, you can't even find a girl that'll have sex with you? Well, that's where you adopt Tool 7, game. This is a big tool, by the way. Too big to explain when I'm making fucking leftovers. You're so kind and boring that nobody will think of you as a boyfriend? Well, Tool 8, Dark Triad behaviors. You have a bipolar chick who's making your life a living hell? Alright, you get the idea. Every problem and obstacle you've ever had, I guarantee there's about 107 other guys who have already had it, probably had it worse, and wrote down what they did to survive and thrive with it. Us guys are so benevolent, we leave these tools just laying around, so pick them up and use them, boys. So this is about the crispiness level I want. The onions get sweet once they caramelize, the potatoes get crisp, and the corn gets a tiny little char on it. I'm going to plate it up in a second, get it ready to make it look like I give a fuck about what I eat. Now, the tricky part to your system is you got to make it amoral. I'm not saying you got to be a psychopath, but realize a lot of those rules you've lived by were given to you by people who didn't want you to thrive, are probably outdated, and oftentimes it's just you screwing it up. So once you stop looking at the world the way it should be and observe the way it is, you're able to adopt the right tool for the right job. Now for cilantro or any herb, there's a technique to chopping them. You want to roll them into a ball and start slicing them thin. Just watch the tape. Notice I still keep my fingers tucked under and my knuckles are used to guide the knife. Do it like this, only better. So for your system, you want to start at the end state and work your way backwards. If you're required to do something you can't or won't do, you either need to nut up and do it anyways, or adjust your expectations to something else. You're going to need resolve sometimes, and you're going to have to make some hard choices. A lot of the time, there's no way around it. You're going to be the bad guy in somebody else's story. You're going to have to be okay with that. So like these leftovers, once you got the major tools in place, life gets pretty good. Not great, not perfect, but good. And this is where the real work happens. At first, you were angry, and that really motivated you to do something. But now that your life's somewhat on lock, the sky's the limit. You can achieve more than you ever thought you could, but no one's behind you making you angry enough to try. This is the self-actualization part. And that's the creme fraiche part. I should make a recipe for this one of these days because once you try it, you're never going to go back. The next thing here, if you guys don't know, since I live with a vegan, I have an emergency meat supply in the fridge. In this case, I take about 1 kilogram of ground pork. I add a couple tablespoons of cocoa powder to it and some oregano. This makes a mole kind of flavor, and it's the most delicious thing ever that goes with anything. So like I said, what do you want out of life? Guys love to skip all that work we just talked about and go straight to this step. Don't be one of them. Deuce Vult, Saving the West, TradCon LARPing assholes are setting themselves up for failure. Let them fail. You can hook up with their ex-wife after the divorce. His treat. Remember, you can't save the world, but you can carve a damned good life for yourself as everyone else crumbles around you. So I'm going to end this off with a shout out to all my Patreons. Thanks guys. This wouldn't have been possible without you. Enjoy.